Welcome to the Alpha Teaching Ministry. This week we start the study of Exodus. Exodus is the second book of the Bible, literally means exit or departure. As we studied last in Genesis, Jacob and his family moved to Egypt due to famine, and with the help of his son Joseph, they settled in the land of Goshen in Egypt. This book records Israel's birth as a nation, the departure of the nation of Israel from harsh bondage in Egypt, how the departure of that 70 Israelites from Egypt came to become a million nation, the now Israel. This departure was the first vital step on a journey to the land of promise that God had provided for them. The key figure of the book of Exodus is Moses, who first greatly doubted his ability to lead God's people, but later he became the greatest leader of all times. He fulfills the special calling of God to lead the people of God from the bondage of the Egyptians. I would say Exodus also forms the heart of Torah. When I was in school, the first Christian movie that wowed me was Moses. It was just absolutely magnificent. Let's first understand the structure of this book. The book of Exodus begins with an account of Egyptian oppression, then moves to the early years of Moses, followed by Moses' calling, his encounter with the Pharaoh and the plagues upon Egypt, then describes the Exodus from Egypt and the Israelites' journey to Mount Sinai. The rest is the law and the establishment of this nation. As with Genesis, early Jewish traditions name Moses as the writer. Pastor Chuck Swindoll suggests that this theory is supported by a number of factors. Moses is the principal author of the Pentateuch, the foundational books of the entire Bible. Moses' unique education in the royal courts of Egypt certainly provided him the opportunity and ability to write these works, as it's mentioned in Acts chapter 7, verse 22. There's also internal evidence, material that's found within the text of Exodus itself, as noted in verses chapter 17, verse 14, 34, verse 4, 27, verse 29. And it adds support for Moses' authorship. Many conversations, events, and geographical details could be known only by an eyewitness or a participant. For example, the text reads in Exodus 24, verse 4, Moses then wrote down everything that the Lord has said. Additionally, other biblical books refer to the law of Moses, as in Joshua chapter 1, 7, 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 3, indicating that Exodus, which includes the rules and regulations, was written by Moses. Jesus himself introduced a quote from Exodus chapter 20, verse 12 and 21, verse 17 with the words, "For Moses said," and he is confirming his understanding of the book's author, as you can read in Mark chapter 7, verse 10. Exodus is very important as it provides a foundation to the Jewish faith. There are two key themes in this book. First is the deliverance that I spoke earlier, from bondage to redemption. Second major theme is worship. This includes the instructions from God about the construction of the tabernacle. Overall, it's a study of God, the sovereign power and authority of the great I Am, the holy and loving God who desires to dwell in the presence of his people, i.e., in the tabernacle, and God worthy to be praised. Now let's study the beginning of Exodus, covering how the bondage began in chapter 1 and then Moses' early life in chapter 2. Chapter 1 ties to the narrative of Genesis with the genealogy of the sons of Jacob. Joseph, his son, is mentioned last in that list, including his death that's singled out. 70 persons came to Egypt with Jacob, where Joseph's family was there. They experienced the fulfillment of the promises of the land to Abraham. They also increased in number very great and multiplied over a period of 400 years. The descendants of Abraham lived in peace for several generations until there rose to power in Egypt a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. And you read that in Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Now that's when the oppression actually begins. This Pharaoh subjugated the Hebrew people and he used them as slaves for his massive building projects. However, the more they got afflicted, the faster the population of Israel increased and they spread out. On the other hand, the oppression included hard labor in the field and brick making for these massive building projects. And of course, we all know it's the pyramids. Now, because God blessed the Hebrew people with rapid numeric growth, the Egyptians began to fear the increasing number of Jews living in their land because that's their home, right? So Pharaoh ordered the death of all male children born to Hebrew women. And you can read that in Exodus chapter 1, verse 22. Now this new king, what he does is he orders the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, to murder. However, thank God these Hebrew women were brave, they were faithful, and they greatly feared God. They defied the king's orders, and the children of Israel continued to thrive and multiply. When this the king angry, he questioned, why, what happened, why these male children are dying. And these ladies were smart, and they answered that the Hebrew women were vigorous and they gave birth without their intervention. Even before they could arrive, they'd already given birth. And that's how they saved the lives of the many Hebrew babies. The frustrated king then declares an order for his people to take control and ensure the death of the newborn male children of the Hebrews. In Exodus 2, the narrative proceeds with birth of a beautiful boy to a Levite couple, Amram and Jochebed. We see Moses' mother attempting to save her child by placing him in a basket and set afloat the river Nile, while his sister Miriam watched over him. The basket was eventually found by Pharaoh's daughter, and this is definitely God's divine plan. And what she does is she adopts him as her own, and she raises him in the palace of the Pharaoh, even though she recognizes that this baby was one of the Hebrews' children. Now, at that time, Miriam, who was hiding, she intervenes and offers to find someone to wean and care for the infant, which the Pharaoh's daughter gladly accepted. Moses' life was not only spared, but he also had the chance to reunite with his birth mother to nurse him. As a son of the Egyptian princess grown, he receives royal upbringing and is given name Moses, basically meant being drawn, which signifies having been drawn out from the water. Now, as Moses grows into adulthood, he begins to empathize with the plight of his people, and upon witnessing an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, Moses intervenes and kills the Egyptians. This also shows, the character of Moses, whether he was able to connect himself to being a Hebrew or an Egyptian. In his heart, he was a good man. He couldn't see the plight of those Israelites who were going through this immense harsh bondage and the oppression that they were facing in and out every day. This hurt him. So when he intervenes in a dispute between the two Hebrews, one of the Hebrews actually rebukes him and sarcastically comments, "Are you going to kill me as you did the Egyptian?" Realizing that this criminal act was made known, Moses panics. He gets scared that the Pharaoh would come to know, and he flees to the land of Midian. There he helps the daughters of Jethro by rescuing them from the shepherds at the well for watering livestock. Even there you can see, like, the Moses character is like he wanted to help. He couldn't see oppression. He was always up wanting to save, right? And that's a great character of Moses. So as we read through the story, he helps the daughters of Jethro. Then the daughters go back and tell their father. In gratitude, Jethro grants the hand of his daughter Zipporah to Moses. God's providential plan for Moses to guide the people of Israel led to an extended sojourn of about 40 years in the desert region of Midian. During this time in Egypt, Israel continued to suffer in severe bondage, and in Exodus 2:24, you can read that God heard Israel's cries and he remembered his covenant with the patriarchs. God took notice of the plight that Israel was going through, and he works on sending a man to liberate and lead them. Church, a few thoughts in conclusion, and we'll catch up next week. Moses probably did not know that God was preparing him for a great purpose. The people of Israel would not have anticipated how God would work to liberate them. But God was working. Likewise, there might be many things around us that we might not comprehend, but God is working towards making those resources available for you, for your God, whether it is physical needs or emotional needs, or in importance, the spiritual needs. The key and vital aspect is your availability to yield to that transformation that God is working in your life. He brings in your life the renewing of your body and your mind and your spirit every day for His glory and honor. We'll connect next week to continue our study. God bless. Thank you for joining our sermon series and our Thursday Bible study series. We have a lot to offer from the 20 plus years of ministerial work available for you in our YouTube channel and social media pages. Please don't forget to subscribe to John Samuel Alwoms on YouTube, Alpha Word Ministries Alwoms on Facebook and Instagram. Looking forward to seeing you there.